The rain had a way of making Buckingham Palace feel smaller. The tall windows, the polished floors, the echoes of history, they all shrank under the weight of drizzle tapping gently on the glass. Inside one of the palace's oldest studies, King Charles III stood still, not as a ruler, but as a son, one haunted by a line of ink barely 6 words long. Protect the heart of the family. His mother had written that. Not in an official document, not in her will, but on a folded piece of paper tucked inside a wooden box beside some of her keepsakes. That note had become his compass, and lately it felt like the only honest thing left in the palace. What Charles didn't expect was that the heart he was supposed to protect might actually be under attack from within. Camilla, the woman who had been by his side through scandal, backlash, and decades of whispered judgment, had changed. Or maybe she hadn't. Maybe Charles was just now seeing clearly. The signs had started subtly. Her hesitation when he mentioned publicizing his mother's will, the way her voice tightened every time the word trust came up. A gentle push to wait, to modernize certain clauses, to protect the crown's image. But behind those rehearsed lines was something more dangerous, a fear Charles couldn't ignore. The Queen's will wasn't just a legal document. It was a declaration of values. Her charitable trust had quietly changed lives around the globe, and Charles wanted the people to know that. He wanted to show the nation that the monarchy could be transparent, that Queen Elizabeth's legacy would not be buried under political dust or media spin, but every time he tried to take a step forward, Camilla pulled back. It all came to a head when Charles found the second copy, hidden inside a rusted iron chest only he and his mother had known about. The will inside was different in same tone, same format, but some of the numbers didn't match. Some of the allocations were off. Charity funds had been redirected, ever so slightly, toward accounts with names that didn't belong there. Names that weren't supposed to be part of this story at all. And then it hit him. This wasn't an oversight. It was a violation. He confronted Camilla, quietly, without fury, but with eyes that had once looked at her with love and now held a chill she hadn't seen in years. She denied it, of course, said it was a draft, a mix-up, something old and discarded. But Charles had already seen the truth flicker in her eyes. Just for a second, a moment of recognition, panic, guilt. And that was all he needed. What stung wasn't just the betrayal, it was how far she was willing to go to cover it up. She'd tried to frame Margaret, the Queen's most loyal servant, accusing her of fabricating stories and leaking documents. But Margaret had seen too much. She'd seen Camilla sneaking into the archives. She'd watched her linger over locked cabinets. And when the moment came, Margaret stood tall and told Charles everything. The fallout didn't happen in whispers. It exploded. Parliament demanded answers. The media circled like vultures. Public trust, already fragile, threatened to snap. Charles felt it all crashing around him. His mother's legacy, the integrity of the crown, and the woman he had trusted more than anyone. But the decision he would make next would change everything. The morning after the confrontation, Buckingham Palace felt frozen in time. Staff moved quietly, conversations were hushed, and an eerie stillness blanketed the corridors. Charles sat alone in the royal study, a stack of documents untouched in front of him, his eyes red from a night with no sleep. The tape recorder containing Queen Elizabeth's voice rested near his hand, still and silent, yet its weight louder than anything spoken. He didn't need a royal council to confirm what he already knew. The altered will, the subtle rerouting of funds, the conversation Camilla had with her lawyer. He had the proof. But the pain wasn't just in the evidence. It was in the betrayal of someone he had once fought the world for. Someone who stood beside him in the fire and now, he realized, had been holding the match all along. That afternoon, Charles called an emergency meeting with his legal advisors and a few trusted members of Parliament. Not everyone was invited. Camilla, notably, was left off the list. He presented the documents and played the recording. The room was gripped by silence. No one spoke for several minutes. The betrayal wasn't just personal, it was political. It threatened the credibility of the monarchy, the trust of the people, and the future of the crown. Still, Charles didn't lash out. He didn't raise his voice or demand revenge. He simply stood and said, "My mother's wishes will be honored. No adjustments, no delays." That was his decree. While the palace buzzed in tight-lipped meetings, Camilla paced the floor of her private quarters, her nerves unraveling with every step. Her attempts to downplay the situation had failed. Her conversations with the lawyer had surfaced. Margaret's testimony had become a quiet roar spreading through palace walls. The look Charles gave her the night before, it wasn't anger, it was heartbreak. And heartbreak was something she didn't know how to fight. Camilla knew she couldn't win back the past, but she wasn't ready to lose the present. She made her way to the study, not to argue, not to manipulate, but to plead. When she entered, Charles didn't look up. He sat still, his expression unreadable, the recorder still on the table beside him like a quiet witness. She dropped to her knees beside his chair, her voice trembling. "Charles, please, I was scared. I didn't want to lose you. I didn't want to lose this life." For a brief second, he closed his eyes. He remembered the years of being ridiculed, how she'd stood by him when no one else did. But now, the ground had shifted. This wasn't about loyalty to him. It was about betraying everything his mother had built. Charles opened his eyes and said quietly, "This isn't about losing me, it's about losing yourself." He didn't raise his voice, he didn't condemn her, but the decision was already made. That evening, in front of the nation and the world, King Charles III stood tall beneath the royal crest. Cameras clicked. The room was full, but it felt silent. His speech was firm but dignified. He spoke of legacy, of integrity, and of a monarchy that would no longer hide behind shadows. He confirmed the full release of Queen Elizabeth's original will without edits or filter. Then, with calm finality, he stripped Camilla of her title as queen consort. The room held its breath. Camilla, watching from a distance, felt the floor drop beneath her. It wasn't just her crown that was taken, it was the trust that once bound them. And without that, the throne meant nothing. The backlash Charles feared never arrived. Instead, something unexpected unfolded. Quiet admiration. Not for the scandal, not for the drama, but for the sheer strength it took to put truth above comfort. The British public, long skeptical of the monarchy's transparency, saw a different kind of king, a man willing to suffer personal loss in order to uphold the values his mother had lived by. His approval ratings didn't plummet. They rose, slowly, earnestly, because he had done what so few in power ever dared to do. He chose honesty over image. Camila, now stripped of her title, remained within the palace walls, but not the royal spotlight. She lived quietly in a modest residence, tucked away from the grand halls and public receptions. No press statements, no photographs, no appearances. The media hounded her for weeks, but eventually grew tired of a woman who refused to speak. Her silence became her only defense. Inside those walls, Camila was not the same woman who had once walked beside a prince. Her days were slow, filled with long walks in empty gardens and letters she never sent. Her meals were light, her posture slightly slouched, her fire dimmed. There was no court to impress now, no image to protect, only memories and regret. She still loved Charles, but she knew love without trust was just a memory with a heartbeat. Margaret received an honor she never expected. At a memorial service for Queen Elizabeth, Charles called her forward in front of the entire royal family and press. He presented her with the Royal Victorian Order, a rare distinction given for personal service to the sovereign. Margaret, her hands trembling, accepted it quietly. She never sought reward. Her loyalty was to the queen, not the throne. But now, the monarchy itself had recognized her for doing what was right. After the ceremony, she quietly requested her retirement. Charles granted it without hesitation. She moved to a small cottage in the countryside, surrounded by nature with no duties and no palace walls. Her chapter had ended peacefully and with dignity. The charitable trust, now fully restored, blossomed into a global symbol of legacy. Projects that had stalled for years found new life. Hospitals were funded, schools rebuilt, relief efforts expanded. Every pound that had once hung in doubt now flowed with purpose. Queen Elizabeth's name appeared on plaques and banners around the world, not as a queen of a country, but as a mother of causes that outlived her reign. One morning, long after the media storm had passed, a single envelope arrived on Charles's desk. No seal, no title, just a letter, handwritten. He knew instantly who it was from. Camila's words were simple, honest. She apologized, not with excuses, but with clarity. She admitted her fear of being cast aside, of becoming irrelevant, of losing the one place in the world she had fought to belong. She wrote that love, twisted by fear, became something else entirely, something she didn't recognize until it was too late. She asked for nothing, no redemption, no title, just forgiveness. Charles folded the letter slowly and placed it in a drawer alongside his mother's note. He didn't cry. He didn't speak. He just sat in silence. He didn't know if forgiveness would come, but he knew he could no longer carry anger. Only time would tell what healing looked like. Later that day, Charles walked the palace gardens alone. The wind was soft, the sky pale and cloudless. He paused before a statue of Queen Elizabeth, his hand resting gently on its base. "I protected it, Mum," he whispered. And with that, the crown moved forward, wounded, wiser, but still standing.